So hello once again and welcome to the Working Group 3 part of the BESTPRAC-EARMA meeting. It's nice to see so many people here. Working Group 3 deals with a variety of legal topics regarding project preparation and management. And yeah, it's a very exciting day ahead of us. My name is Maja Skočanić Matovac and I will be your moderator for the next hour. I work at the University of Rijeka in Croatia and have been a BESTPRAC member since the very beginning and a core group member for the past 4 years. Before we start, I would like to remind you that the meeting is being recorded, which means if you switch your camera on, you might appear in the recording. So you can choose to have your cameras on or off. I would also like to kindly ask you to keep your microphones off so we don't disturb the speakers. We have 3 presentations ahead of us. If you have any questions or comments for the speakers, feel free to write them in the chat section. There will be time for a discussion. Without any further ado, I think we should dive right into our first session on data management plan and compliance with GDPR, held by Lorenzo Mannella. Lorenzo is a project manager with a background in plant biotechnology and science journalism. He works at the University of Bologna, managing technical, financial, and ethical aspects of EU-funded projects. He works with data protection officers and legal consultants to assess GDPR compliance of research activities. He also works as a communications officer and a freelance journalist. Lorenzo, feel free to start when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Maya, and thank you everybody for joining. I'm now sharing my slides and switching to presentation mode. I hope you see it. Okay. So thank you, first of all, for having me here presented at BESTPRAC-EARMA. Thanks especially to Christina, Joanna, Vera, Gemma, Maya, and all the staff behind the organization of the event. I'm really happy to be here. And also thank you for presenting me. This is just a quick slide, and I would just like to remind that I'm really lucky to work with great colleagues as post-award project manager at the University of Bologna, that I've been a pre-awards project manager in the past and also working as a freelance science writer, but now I'm focusing on post-award at the University of Bologna. And just to jump to my first slide, which is a brief introduction to my presentation, I will show you some data on ethics issues in Horizon 2020, so we can be on the same page together. But we will also then move to Horizon Europe rules, and we all know that we have just a draft annotated grant agreement model so far. And see what changes from pre to post award phases. And of course, I will discuss some key questions in data management plans, and then leave as much time as possible to questions, discussion, and learn from each other's experience. So my slides here, I'm just showing some results from a recent paper in PLOS ONE, where we understand that ethics issues in Horizon 2020 are a well-known phenomenon. It's not something that we never heard about. And this recent article looked at the whole set of Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions over the years. So it's around 80,000 proposals, and then identified many cases of protection of personal data, non-European countries, and human ethics issues, so as categories, recognized both from applicants at self-assessment, so it is the table on the top, and ethics experts is the table at the bottom. As you know, of course, the protection of personal data category speaks for itself, but also the non-European countries. Most of the times, it is a category that has to do with the transfer of personal data from Europe to non-European countries. At some degree, The humans category has to do with how we engage with human volunteers or during research, and sometimes has to do with informed consent, but also on the way how we treat personal data for people participating in our research. As you can see from the tables, around 20% of this MSTA proposal have to do with protection of personal data. But this is not the only study looking at this. There is another study looking at proposals with ethics conditional clearance, meaning issues that must be solved before signing the grant agreement, usually by setting requirements such as deliverable or project ethics advisor to be implemented during the project. And what is interesting here that we also have some data from ERC actions. And what is really nice to know is, of course, that each panel has a different frequency of privacy-related ethics issues. And of course, the social and humanities panel is the one with the most frequencies. Here you see the identifying proposal on top and identified by ethics panels on the bottom. But at the end, even if we have so much aggregated data, this aggregated data cannot explain what happened next. So when this project starts, especially in collaborative projects. And so it brings us to the main difference between pre and post-award phases, which are, of course, very different in also handling the ethics requirements. One of the key elements of data and personal data management in both phases is the data management plan. So project proposal in Horizon Europe must include at least one page in part B of the proposal on fair data management, which of course translates to the data management plan due by month 6 of the project. This is a starting point, but in fact, it cannot cover all the things that happen when the project starts and the real mess comes kicking in and changing your plans. And just talking about data management plans, they include specific information on research data handled within your project. So I'm not a top expert in data management plans, so we had great presentations yesterday on this topic, but I can of course suggest you to read the DMP template in advance and also use supporting documents, supporting web tools such as Argos, which is very useful, just because DMPs should be considered as living documents to be updated constantly, especially if your project processes personal data, which is a real specific category of research data. That's because DMP templates do not list specific questions on personal data management. There are just a couple of ethics issues reminder, but it doesn't help you understand what's going on. And of course, as a manager, you should ask the questions yourselves. So you should know if data protection officers and legal officers have been involved in organizing the proposal, and if someone ran a check during the grant agreement preparation phase. So, for example, what about data sets that were needed at proposal stage? Are they still available at grant agreement and project running phase? And what about the person who is responsible for the data management plan? Maybe is a researcher, maybe is a colleague from another office. Is this person aware of personal data implications and different attitudes of the consortium towards privacy topics? That's because sometimes we tend to confuse research data with personal data. They are two completely different things. So these are painful questions, of course, because as a project manager, maybe we are the first one to ask them. And in my experience, in our experience, some of these questions can be answered in advance at proposal stage. for example, by drafting data transfer agreements. And at least here at University of Bologna, we are trying to experiment in it as a support. Let's think about it as an agreement needed just in case key partners need to exchange data sets. So data sets that include personal data, of course, and you want to make sure that they are compliant with GDPR, that the controller can transfer these data sets to other partners, and you want to know that in advance before the project starts, just not to lose time during the project starting activities. And you have to, in my opinion, you have to decide this at proposal stage, because you cannot wait for the consortium agreement stage, for example, for many reasons. For example, because the attachment on background is not specific, is not specifically tailored to data management, to personal data management. At the same time, the new DESCA model for Horizon Europe talks about personal data management, but it's just a general reminder of law compliance that should be applied to all partners. So it's not something real specific for the personal data that you're managing in your project. And to summarize, I see no other possible solution that having pre-award and post-award managers to work together. Of course, if it is the case that the two offices are not, the person taking care of pre-award is not the same one who takes care about of post-award, which is the case of University of Bologna, for example. That's because our organizations are complex environments, and we know that. But we also know that Horizon projects are probably the best chance to bring this diversity together and establish best practices on personal data protection and project management. And I think that we can learn a lot from each other. And this is why I'm stopping here. To be 10 minutes, and leave the floor to your questions and feedback. I really look forward to listening to your voice, and I just leave a couple of useful links for you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you for an interesting presentation. So if you have any questions, you can write them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and you can ask them in person, whatever you prefer. For me, I would like to ask a bit more on how the process is organized at the University of Bologna. So you said you have one office for pre-award and for post-award regarding data management protection.
Yeah, especially I was mentioning the fact that we are working as two separate offices in grant proposal preparation, and then grant agreement phase, and then post-award. So specifically, there are many offices taking care of our proposals, and then there is one office where I work for that has to do with coordinated projects. And of course, we also have partner projects, mainly worked by at department level. But what happens with personal data is a little bit more complex, because there is no single way to approach personal data in Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe projects. So we have, of course, a data protection officer, we have project ethics advisors, and we have several other offices, like legal offices, taking part in the process of organizing the proposal and how the proposal is transferred to a grant agreement preparation phase. And then, of course, we have the colleagues working in the departments that know about the research that is going on in each project, in each consortium. And that's a very complex way of putting all the pieces together, because of course there are projects, for example, that have no privacy issue at all. For example, I'm following a project which is just focusing on on simulations on computers, and there are no personal data involved at all. So it's quite easy. So it's solved since the beginning. But there are other projects that have to do with health and clinical data, other projects that have to do with data in foreign countries, so other low assets involved. So there is no single way of working on that, in my opinion. So the role of a manager that works on that side is to understand what is facing or what she's facing. So if it's the case of getting in touch with colleagues at department level and finding out what that's about, if the research staff is aware of what's going on privacy level, and so that's why we really need the help of different colleagues.
And so the same team also works on the data management plan then, if the project gets approved, or?
Here again, there is no one solution. We have a team of really skilled people working on that, but we have so many projects that, of course, there's not so much time to dedicate to every project, of course. So it depends also on the skills of the research team working on that. There are teams that are really skilled in data management, so they already know what they have to do because they know how this works. And the slides that I showed at the beginning concerning the social and humanities panels sometimes reflects the truth. So researchers with background on personal data or working with humans, let's talk it as working with humans, are have a different approach and know that they have to take care of the interactions with people that they work with at data collection level. So you usually find people in the social and humanities fields that are more willing to look at the way that privacy issues or topics are implemented. While sometimes let's call them hard science teams are often used to work with research data that do not imply the involvement of people, of humans. But as you know, in Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe's, more and more projects are going hybrid, meaning that hard sciences are working with social and humanities. And so the real difficult work here is to have them talk together, and so understand where the two words collide and where you can jump in and say, okay, we have GDPR and we have to sort out a solution to manage the data.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So we have a question from Christina live, and then we have also 2 questions in the chat.
Yes, so I thank you again for coming and also for your presentation. I would like to ask a specific question. So I work in a faculty of social sciences and humanities, so we have a lot of personal data and working with third countries and these kind of things. And we also here at the pre-award office, we also deal with them, or we try to deal with it already at the application phase, where we try to solve or try to identify all the main issues. But actually one of the missing pieces that we feel as a pre-award officer is the lack of training that we have, and sometimes we lay a lot on the common sense and the readings that we do. So my question was, do you have any training, specific training for that? And also, do you think that it's important to have also some legal background? Because I think also some legal hard information are necessary to deal with some of these things. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, it's really hard to have to do with privacy compliance. Yes, we have training. So we have the data protection officer, ethics advisors that organize periodic trainings, especially because you need an introduction to the topic, and that's the basis, because you really need to know that laws apply, that GDPR is there, that there's not just the GDPR, but here in Italy, we also have national laws that have to do with that, and they are complementary to the GDPR. But then it's, of course, it's also hard to keep the pace with the evolving landscape of GDPR, because of course GDPR is there, but what's around GDPR is always changing day after day, and of course it is not possible to follow that, especially if not all of us have a law background. So I'm a plant biotechnologist, so of course I can understand something, I can read complex documents, but I cannot go so far away. But that's useful because I know when to stop. So I know that I've followed many updates, but I know when the things get too much complicated, and I know when I have to go to DPOs and legal officer, ethics advisor, and say, okay, I found this issue, but let's work together on a solution. So it's fundamental that we both receive training, and at the same time we know that we have procedures to say, okay, I spotted something that can be a joint data controllership agreement, what I have to do. Maybe I'm not the one who is going to discuss in detail how this data control agreement is drafted, but I'm the one who is raising the question because I know that is needed. And I know there is no single answer to that, but I guess that, yes, as you said, training is fundamental, and both at pre and post award level.
Thank you, Lorenzo. We are kind of running out of time, but one last question. Nuria would like to ask you if you have any experience on the creation of new metadata for data sets, and in that case, how hard it was. Did you produce them with the support of the RDA?
I haven't had this experience so far, and I have a project where the metadata talks are going on, and they can be really complex when it regards research data, for example, real complex data that have to include a lot of metadata, but not concerning privacy. And of course, this is a topic that has to be, implemented, I guess, in every project, because tools like the Argos that I showed you, or other complementary metadata information could help projects in manage their data on the long term. That's my feeling. When you run a project, most of the times you just take care of what's included in the really 4 years time lapse of your project, but metadata and other ways to identify your data sets are probably what helps you in the future to get back that data, to understand the one you can comply with, for example, data erasing obligations, etc., etc. But I'm not an expert in that. I haven't had an experience in that. It would be nice to have talks and presentation on these topics, because I'm really interested in that too.
Okay, so that's maybe an idea for one of our next meetings. Yeah.
I will follow that.
I would like to read a question by Esme. This is for everyone in the working group meeting. So does anyone have experience with data sharing with international organizations? Standard contractual clauses are necessary, but will become available from the EU in 2023. Has anyone had experience? So if anyone has experience, I suggest answering Esme in the chat and helping her out and maybe sharing some information about this. Yeah. And with this, I would like to thank Lorenzo for your presentation. And we are moving on to the next one. So we will now hear from Cátia Teles and Marques, who is a publishing policies manager at the Nova School of Social Sciences and Humanities in Portugal. Cátia has been working in the area of research management for 8 years with a focus on scholarly publishing and open access. Presently, she is working on advocacy and implementation of the policies of open science and on the adoption of best practices by journals and book collections published at Nova in collaboration with the research units and the library services. In today's session, Cátia will share the experience of a working group led by RMAs to start developing open science practices in an institution without an open access policy. Cátia, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Maja, for your introduction. I will share my presentation. Are you, is it okay? You're seeing my presentation?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay. So I'm really glad to be here, participating in such a great event and having the opportunity to share our work at Nova FCSH. I will start by introducing our background in open science, and then I will present our bottom-up initiative that, if all goes well, will lead us to implementing an adequate open science policy in our institution. Very recently, the importance of open science has been proved by the pandemic and recognized by UNESCO, which has just approved a recommendation on its adoption. Following the community declarations and international recommendations, public funding agencies such as the European Research Council, European Commission, or national agencies implemented their own open access policies. And since 2021, new legal obligations are being implemented now to promote the large umbrella of open science, not only open access. This morning, we heard Martin Baumgartner presenting the open science new mandatory criteria on Horizon Europe. Thus, public funded research has to make their results and data freely and openly available on institutional repositories for the purposes of being findable, accessible, and reusable by other researchers or any interested citizen. But also other practices are being incentivized. These legal obligations have a direct impact on the academic tasks and procedures, such as those Lorenzo presented just yet. That require a common effort and dialogue within the community. Since 2008, that Nova FCSH has been gradually working on advocacy and support to open access with the creation of the repository and CRIS system and making freely available our in-house publications. But these initiatives were being led by the library, research units, and the research support office in a fragmented and not so effective way. In addition to the support to research and innovation projects, compliance with funding agency policies, open access to publications and research infrastructures, it was imperative to overcome fragmentation and to bring together people who were interested in open science and responsible for implementing it. Also, because we are working without the ground and guidance of an institutional or even a national policy, creating a work group was the key solution to make way to implementing open science at Nova FCSH. So our Open Science Work Group is a bottom-up initiative established in September 2020 and based on cooperation and inclusiveness. It is composed by the OS representatives from different departments of Nova FCSH. We think this multidisciplinary approach is innovative as it promotes the participation of different actors of the research and innovation ecosystem and an inclusive view on OS, from research to research management, from academic publishing to information science, from decision to implementation. Thus, we aim at implementing open science practices by paying attention to the knowledge and skills of our community and to the necessary strategies and measures, such as promoting awareness and advocacy actions and developing an internal network. Also, we envision consolidating Nova FCSH position on open science by promoting a community-led policy well suited to its specificity, needs, and aims. Having these goals in mind, our work is targeted in particular to research managers, researchers, professors, and our decision-making bodies. And for the purpose of task and time management, we created 3 subgroups with specific goals: definition of an institutional policy, open science best practices and implementation, and activities and training. Each subgroup meets regularly, and general meetings take place every 2 months to present results and make decisions. On occasion, external experts are invited to participate and discuss specific subjects. I thought that it would also be useful to mention the challenges we have had. Regarding these, I may point the group being established during the COVID pandemic. Being a voluntary activity poses problems of lack of time and availability. Not all of the members can be present at all times. So the development of activities has been favored by their flexibility, sense of initiative, and mutual help. Also, working in such a team involves gathering participants with different levels of knowledge and skills, as well as agendas and priorities. Nevertheless, while that demands extra time for discussions and decisions, the added value to gather different mindsets is of major importance to consolidate and justify the work developed towards our community needs. On the other hand, integrating device teams into the work group was very important to gather high-level insights about the strategies and visions on open science. But it certainly takes an extra effort to make it an institutional priority, since there is still no policy at the university level. Despite being a very, Despite being a very recent group and its voluntary in nature, the Open Science Work Group implemented a consistent program of activities targeted to different members of the Nova FCSH community. It was based on the main international recommendations for the implementation of open science in institutions, adapted to our community context. These were our main achievements: an open science webpage, the Open Access Survey Knowledge and Practices in Nova FCSH, and the Open Science Month. The Open Science webpage is hosted by the school's website, and it's dedicated to disclosing information and news. It includes frequent asked questions, main requirements of the funding agency's policies, tools, and resources. We were pleased with the community considering it its preferential source of information on open science. This Open Science survey was an online questionnaire targeted to all our community. It focused on open access to publications and research data management, and on our institution support activities and information and training on open science. The data collected resulted in an analysis report partially disclosed on the Open Science webpage and enabled the work group to undertake precise actions and set up adequate strategies for Nova FCSH. In 2020 and 2021, Nova FCSH joined again the International Open Access Week initiative, promoted annually by SPARC. but last year there were double online activities of dissemination, training and discussion throughout October, aimed at specific audiences, and an online awareness campaign, production of videos of ambassadors advocating on the advantages of open science, which will be available at our webpage. This program was made possible by working together and sharing ideas and thoughts. Although there was an increase in the number of participants in these activities, we still struggle to engage researchers in these matters. Therefore, we decided to keep up with the awareness and advocacy actions by increasing online content and establishing a regular agenda of training activities in 2022. Also, we will work on completing internal procedures and on the promotion and implementation of our roadmap for open science. A big next step will be working on a draft of an open science policy. Besides from the necessary survey of international recommendations and benchmark work, it will require working close with the community. We would like to promote extensive discussion with the other representatives of the different stakeholders to achieve a policy that simultaneously meets the demands of the science and technology agenda and policies and the specificities, needs and strengths of our community. Hopefully, we will have good news on this within a year or so. On behalf of the Open Science Work Group, thank you very much for attending. I'll be glad to answer to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Cátia, for a very interesting presentation. And I must say, congratulations to you and your team for doing such great work in such a short amount of time. So it's only a year and a couple of months. So yeah, congratulations. This really sounds fantastic. And I think that the fact that the working group was bottom up, so I think it is probably one of the reasons why it was so successful and you have such great results in the past 16 months. So yeah, we do have a question for you. So you mentioned for the next steps in an institutional open science policy, you are implementing the NOVA roadmap for open science. Mm-hmm. So what is the roadmap? Can it be shared, or can you tell us more about it?
Well, the roadmap was a task asked by the coordinator of the research division to the research support office, and it was built having in mind our community specificities and the work being done within the work group. And then this roadmap was presented to the Open Science Work Group to be validated and enriched with their opinions, and to be a better document for the higher level decision makers to have a document for strategy purposes. I don't know if I replied.
So the roadmap is basically it outlines the open access policies of the entire university. Okay.
And not the university, not at all. Only for the school of social sciences and humanities. It points out the urgent priorities and also other principles, open science principles that we could work on because we were mapping work that has been done by our community, and we could bet on also on those principles because we reckon we don't have to cover all the principles and areas of open science. We should invest in those which are mandatory by the funding agencies, but also that we know we could interest our community.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you and congratulations once again. Thank you for sharing your experience. And with that, I would like to invite the final speaker for today. That is Jure Vindišar, head of the Technology Transfer Office in the Slovenian National Institute of Biology. So Jure started his career as a researcher at the University of Ljubljana Faculty of Mechanical Engineering, after which he moved to an engineering SME, being responsible for R&D funding and project implementation in the field of energy efficiency, use, and smart grids. He has been working at the National Institute of Biology since 2017, first as a member of the project office and now acting as head of the TTO. As such, he will present us his views on the challenges a technology transfer office faces. So Jure, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maja, for a nice introduction. Are you well? Do you see my presentation and hear me?
Great. Yes, everything is great.
Okay, very good, thanks. Today I want to speak about accelerating innovations. Basically, I want to speak about or discuss three things. Firstly, where is the place of Technology Transfer Office in the research organization? Number two, what are the key activities and operations of Technology Transfer Office as such? And I hope you'll have some more time to discuss organization, financing, and evaluation of results of Technology Transfer Office. Technology transfer is the process of transferring ideas or technologies from one organization to another. Today, we will focus on transferring from research organizations to industry. Doing this, Technology Transfer Office supports researchers to commercialize the results of their research. Another thing that's really important to mention here is talking about the scope of TTO work is that the quality of the research results and the volume of the research activity within the research institution is critical when we determine the TTO characteristic and their operations. Maja already explained that I'm basically employed as head of TTO for the last 5 years here at the National Institute of Biology. Before that, I was working in industry and I started my career for 10 years as a researcher. So basically, when I applied for this job, I thought I was a perfect guy for this mission. How wrong was I actually? And today, I want to speak to you about my experiences in these 5 years regarding the leading operations of TTO here. Let me start with two stories of my dear friends and colleagues, researchers, Alia and Anže. Researchers are our key customers. We do have some more customers, some more stakeholders, we'll discuss this later, but basically researchers are our first-line customers. So are Alia and Anže. Both of them are really good researchers with excellent results, with the potential to commercialize, etc., but with different background. Alia has, before I met her, she was employed in a large pharma company, international pharma company, and he then came back to NIP. And when we talk about her ideas, her plans for the future regarding the commercialization, technology transfer, etc., she was really fair to me and open and said, Jure, you know, I just changed the job. I came from the large company to institute. I really want to do my basic research. I don't want to be a businesswoman. Anže, on the contrary, he joined NIP in June last year. After his PhD, he went to the United States, been employed by the large university in Pennsylvania. Then he came back. When he came back in June, what I was doing for him was basically one NDA after another. Every week there was another NDA to be managed for him. He has already planned the meetings with the industry partners every single week regarding the potential to commercialize his results or working some joint research project, etc. So what my message here is that technology transfer at the institute is basically individual work with researchers. And what I was missing with all my experiences I have in my previous life was actually this communication with researchers. Let's go then to the TTO office and see where it is placed in the frame of research institution. We will look at it from two perspectives. One is the perspective of development of a research project, and the other is perspective of technology readiness level. When we're looking at the development of the project, from the idea, planning research, looking for the money, winning the research funding, etc., it is quite obvious that the technology transfer office came in the game just after the research results are generated. And this is kind of general perspective. So these results can be generated even during the project or after the project. And when we have these results, the TTO comes in and start to selling those results. My approach is a little bit different. I'm personally really keen if I became a member of the project in earlier stage. Planning would be perfect, or at least when we discuss funding, even better. So I recommend that the TTO guys came in the game really at the early stage of project development. It really helps protecting IP, developing IP, and selling the results. In particular, it is very good that the guys from TTO really understand the problem, understand the solution and the impact. The same story is basically if you look at it from the perspective of technology readiness level. Someone say that the TTO came to the game in the higher numbers, let's say 6, 7, or 8. When we have the results, when we have the product on the table, and we just have to sell it, find the customers, and so on. Again, much better to come in the TTO come in the game in the earlier stages. Here in particular, we will discuss this later, is the critical issue of financing. And TTO can really help of finance the projects in the earlier stages. Here you can see the map of the landscape of innovation system. Someone would say even better, the community of the innovation ecosystem. Bringing innovation to the market is absolutely something that cannot be done just by research institution itself. We need partners, we need stakeholders. I borrowed this map from an excellent book from Tom Hockaday, University Technology Transfer. By the way, I really recommend reading this for you who are keen to know more about it. And I put just a few. I will not evaluate all the stakeholders, but I just on the right side I just put a couple of them here. Research organization is the center of the ecosystem. Here is the place where the ideas are born, but then we have to bring those ideas to the results and later to the market. Industry is critical partners, at least industry. If we don't have industry around us that is ready to absorb innovations, there is no one who can buy our results. Government is responsible for making a suitable governance environment. I will just tell you one, I call it Slovenian example, or Slovenian case. Last year, we in Slovenia adopted a new research and development law. And it is now the first time that the research institutions can have shares in the startups or better to say spin-off companies. So up to now, the only way to do the business with the industry was via licensing contracts, but now we can have the shares in the common companies, joint companies. Beside the industry and the government, we need also a friendly environment that can help our newborn companies to grow, to go to the market, and this is the incubators, basically intended for mentoring the startups, and then technology parks who can offer a nice, safe environment for the newly born companies. Last but not least, I have to mention investor ecosystem. Investors ecosystem is, I would say, ecosystem in an ecosystem. But we cannot manage to do the startups, to sell the companies, or even to bring the ideas to the market without the proper funding. And you know that it's relatively easy to find a funding for basic research. And then again, relatively easy to find investors or funding for the higher tier level results. But in between is usually a critical space. We called it valley of death or proof of concept phase, where we really need to persuade investors to join the efforts and bring some money on the table. What actually are scopes of TTO activities? I must say I'm also a member of, or our institute is the member of a consortium of research institutes or technology transfer offices in Slovenia. We are like 7 largest universities and institutes. In the last 5 years, we are trying to change the innovation ecosystem in Slovenia. And in frame of this project, end of last year, we organized a roundtable. We bring on this roundtable some of our stakeholders, researchers, our colleagues from TTO offices, and colleagues from industries. And you ask them simple questions. What do you expect from TTO offices to offer you? And now to make 2-3 hour roundtable short, I will just give you a few critical answers. From the point of the researchers, they actually expect financing and expect networking, industry networking. And from our industry partners, they basically expect us to be translators. They expect TTO guys to translate the industry language to research language and vice versa, research language to industry language. And with this, they want us to be one-stop or expect us to be one-stop shop for industry. To be now more, I would say, technical, the scope of TTO activities are basically identification, protection, marketing of research results. We do it by discovering IP, a selection of best promising technologies for commercialization, developing IP, financing we already mentioned, and at the end of the day, selling research outputs. We do it basically, we have basically 2 groups of tasks. First is more technical, and the other is more soft, I would say. On the first group, the critical TTO activities are IP management, whether it goes for innovation, invention, or patent. Contract management, it means managing different kind of contracts, licensing, collaborative, different kind of agreements, NDAs, and etc. We are very happy if we can bring our work so far that we can support to set up a new company, if we can attract industrial partners or investors or public funding for investing our innovation in our development of our innovations. And the critical thing is also the evaluation of potential for commercialization. This is basically, I think, really critical thing. It's really individual, and we have a really open and transparent when doing this, because we can get a lot of ideas, a lot of potentials for commercialization on the table, and we are here the one to kind of support some and somehow stop the others. It's connected with money, it's connected with time, and this is really critical. On the other side, we have to take care to setting up innovation culture. First, inside our organizations, and then with our effort also outside. This goes with excellent education, with communication inside, outside, and etc. Here, just a few examples how this can be done. I borrow those examples mostly from my colleagues from University of Ljubljana. They have quite large TTOs compared to ours. And just 2 things, they do excellent brochures when they educate the researchers, and every year they have a tender for so-called innovation fund, when researchers can get a couple of thousands of euros to do the feasibility study, market research, whatever. So basically really motivating for researchers, not to be only the researchers, but also to think to commercialize, to think innovation. On the left side, this is, I would say, our latest achievement. We believe that this year in the region of Slovenia and Croatia, the platform Central Eastern European Technology Transfer platform will start. This is basically in an investment fund for funding the project in this valley of death. It is kind of project concept fund. 40 million plus private funding. We expect a lot of money, and we are looking forward to work on the ideas to spend this money in the best possible way. I told you at the beginning that in spite my excellent references, I thought I was a really perfect guy for being a head of TTO. However, in the last 5 years, I really realized that it takes really great knowledge to do the knowledge transfer. And to just mention a few expertises required, and the experts for different fields requires to do the job well. To sell the results, we need law experts, we need technical experts, we need experts for marketing economy, for social science. I mentioned communication a couple of times. We need experts for patent management. At our institute, we are a rather small TTO. So we, in the last 5 years, we did quite nice network of external experts that can help us do our job. So basically, it's probably the best way to find a compromise between the internal TTO resources and external ones. Let me close with a few words about financing and evaluation of TTO operations. Regarding the financing, you may heard that there were some trials that or some ideas that the TTO offices can be self-sufficient. Basically, it means they can earn enough money to survive. When we are considering this, it's absolutely always an option. We have to have two things in mind. First is that TTO activities have always long-term effects. Another one is that the incomes from IP commercialization are rather unstable. We can have a good profits for a certain period of time, and then it goes down and go up again. It's really unstable. But when we're talking about money, we also have to consider the indicators, the metrics that evaluates our work. I listed here a couple of them. It's always a challenging task, but it will be enough now just to say that we have monetary and not monetary indicators that can help us to evaluate our work short-term and long-term. That is basically all from my side. I put on the last slide just a few challenges, but basically I see this only just as a baseline, as a forum to discuss this later in some other place and time, if possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jure, for an excellent presentation. I think for someone who's maybe, especially for someone who's just starting out and thinking about how to organize their TTOs, this is incredibly valuable. I wanted to ask you if, I see there are no questions so far in the chat. So you mentioned the evaluation on your one of your final slides. Mm-hmm. So is the evaluation, are you doing it internally, or is your work being evaluated on the institute level?
Basically, this idea came when we started the project financed by our Ministry of Education. So basically, they want to evaluate us, and they're monitoring all the TTO offices in Slovenia on this kind of common way. However, this money will stop in half a year, and we started to think about to evaluate ourselves internally, because we want to compare. We want to do the benchmarking with other TTOs, and also it's very good for yourself or again to discuss it with your manager, director of the institute, whoever stakeholder to show your, I would say, the results.
Thank you. And are you collaborating with other university or institutes in Slovenia in this regard, or is there like a transfer of knowledge between the TTOs, or is it something that's still being established in other research performing organizations? Yeah, in Slovenia we are really we have really different. Our TTOs, the Institute of University, are really in the different stages. We have some big institute like Josef Stefan Institute with a really large TTO. Again, the largest universities of Ljubljana and Maribor the last 5 years, they establish TTO with, I don't know, 8 to 10 people working on that. But on the other hand, we have a lot of small TTOs. Some of them just started their work. So yeah, it was really, for the last 5 years, this project was really an excellent added value for us to
as you say, to exchange ideas, to be better, to discuss. We organize a lot of workshops for us, so TTL employees, for the researchers, to get also the knowledge from the outside. So it was really a great experience. I would recommend it. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your presentation and good luck with your work. I would now like to conclude this Working Group 3 meeting with this. Thank you to all our 3 speakers. Your presentations were really informative, and I hope you had use in hearing all this information. I now invite you all to join the plenary session on the link I'm putting in the chat for some final information on our future activities and closing words. Thank you all for participating, and see you in the plenary.